Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Men of Law podcast. My name is Karl Lentini, and I'm very happy today to have a guest with me who I met 23 years ago, I believe, in 2003, named Gaetano Cipolla. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me to do this. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with you or what you do, just give us a little background.
Okay. Well, I taught for 45 years in most universities of New York, but I ended my career at St. John's University, where I taught for 31 years. I was in charge of the language department for them for 2 sessions, for 6 years actually. And I retired maybe about 14 years ago. In addition to that, I am the president of an organization that promotes the language and culture of Sicily. We have about 1,500 members throughout the world. We organize a tour, the one that you came on, but we do all kinds of things. We promote everything Sicilian, primarily to try to change the perspectives that people have about Sicilian. You know, the media hasn't been too kind to Sicilians because of the mafia. And we are trying to tell the world, in fact, that the mafia really is not the determinant characteristics that we want to be known as. The mafia occupies a very small place in Sicilian, in the Sicilian heritage, because Sicily has produced great things throughout the world. Sicily was at the center of the known world, in the middle of the Mediterranean, the largest island there, but where it functioned almost as a kind of bridge between the Orient, Africa, and Europe, so that many people came to Sicily to conquer it because it was the most beautiful island in the world, and they were looking actually for the sun. Sicily was the promised land of many people, and so they all came to Sicily. We can count about 18 different dominations of people who have come to Sicily, not only to conquer it, but to stay. Obviously, some stayed longer than others. Some didn't leave any trace of their coming, but many of them did. And primarily, the Greeks came to Sicily because they were running out of space in Greece, and they came to Sicily in the 8th century before Christ. Actually, you were in Sicily, and we were in a town called Giardini Naxos, which was the first place where the colonists from Greece stepped on, and that was in 735 BC. And they founded this place called Naxos, and recently Giardini, which was always known as Giardini, added the name of Naxos, Giardini Naxos, to recall what happened 735 BC. Within 25 years, the Greeks colonized different places around the east coast of Sicily, like Messina, Catania, Lentini. Lentini is your name. Was one of the very first colonies of done by Greece. Then Syracuse, Gela, and then like that. And then eventually they went inland and they founded Agrigento. They never went all the way up on the western coast, but they had influence, obviously. So Sicily was and is an important island that has had a great deal of influence on Western civilization. So my work has been basically that of publishing all these things, publishing all the works. And we publish, if you become a member of Arba Sicula, which basically only costs $30 a year, you will get a copy of, I'll show you. I don't know if you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
This is called Arba
A little higher. Yeah.
Arba Sicula. And you can see it's also the same thing in English on the side. So because it's a unique magazine of usually 160 pages that is written in Sicilian on the left and English on the right. So everything in the book is bilingual. And it contains basically literature, poetry, narratives, and then things of interest, art, music, whatever actually gets me to write about it, because I'm the only one who does it. I'm the only one who actually, well, I have people working with us, but it contains, I do all the translations into English and all the translations into Sicilian, because sometimes, well, most of the time we actually do translate from Sicilian into English. Sometimes people who write to me in English, if I deem the contributions to be worthy, I translate it into Sicilian. So it's Sicilian English. And this is number 46. Number 46, which means that it has been published for 46 years.
So it's an annual publication, once a year?
This used to be a biannual, twice a year, but it was too much work. And when I became president of Arba Sicula in 1987, 88, the first volumes for maybe about 3 years, I did 2 issues a year. But then by issue number 12 or something like that, I decided to actually condense it and make it a larger thing. But basically, the first issue of Arba Sicula was done on IBM typewriter. So you can see kind of images, the kind of thing that we have done. We brought the magazine into the modern age. So, and I can still recall that the first issue of the magazine was written with a laser printer that I did. A laser printer which only had one font, Courier. And now, of course, if you look at it, I can. It has color. It has color. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, okay.
It has color and like this.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
These things here were, for example, an article on the islands of the Pelagie Islands of Sicily, south of Italy. We did a series of articles to talk about the various islands that belong to Sicily. Like the Aeolian Islands, the islands off the coast of Trapani, and the ones in the south. So this is one. So we publish Arba Sicula, which is this, once a year. But we also publish a newsletter which is this one here.
Mm-hmm.
Sicilia, which is called Sicilia Parla, which means Sicily speaks. And this is primarily in English, except for 2 pages, which has translation of poetry into English. But this is all in color, but you can see it. It's all in color. This article was on Santa Rosalia, who is the patron saint of Palermo. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
But so this comes out twice a year. And this is the itinerary of the tour. Number
Oh,
31.
okay.
Number 31. But so basically, in addition to these things, we also do supplements. I think we published 8 different supplements that are mostly poetry, or not only poetry, but 8 of them. In addition to that, and people get it for $30 a year. So I like to say basically that uh, it's the best buy in town. You know why? It's the best buy in town because we also have 3 or 4 events every year at St. John's University, now at Italian Charities, because well, anyway, we have people who come in. We invite people from Sicily to come to New York. We have invited tour groups, folk groups. Val d'Acragas, for example, um, came to New York last year, in May of last year. In May of last year, 15 people, and we actually uh, sponsored them. So whenever we have something like that, if you're a member of Arba Sicula, you can bring yourself to the event, and you can bring as many people as you like. So that, and then after the show, after the wonderful show that they usually put up, not only these people, but everything that we do, we feed them. So for $30 a year, you get entrance to a beautiful presentation, a lecture or recital or whatever, and then you get fed. Not only for yourself, but for all your guests. So you can bring 10 guests, and you can do that. We are the only ones who never charge for people to come into our thing. So if people pay $30 a year, it's the best buy in town. It really is. So we do that. In addition to that, of course, I have a publishing house which is called Legas, which means read. It's an invitation to read. And through this endeavor, I have published, as I told you before, maybe 160, 165 books. I don't keep count of it. I've actually founded 3 series of books. 3 series. One is called Poets of Arba Sicula, which I'll show you one of the last one. This is volume 20, I forgot, 20, 21 or 22. No, this is volume 20. Volume 20, and this is the poetry of Ignazio Buttitta. Why Ignazio Buttitta? Ignazio Buttitta, I told you before, is one of the most famous Sicilian poet of all time, of the 19th century, of the 20th century, 20th century. He traveled all over the world. He was a socialist mostly, but he was a man that whose poems inspired us, because if I recall, one of his most famous poems is one that says that if you lose your language, if you lose the language that you learn at your mother's lap, on your mother's lap, you become poor and enslaved. Losing a language is basically like losing your identity. And his first poem, this poem was published in the first issue of Arba Sicula. First issue of Arba Sicula in 1979. So he has become for us kind of an icon of what our organization stands for. The defense of the Sicilian language, which obviously is under threat because people do not, because as I said, people have been indoctrinated not to speak Sicilian. Because first, I give you a little quote. When Italy became a nation in 1861, the leaders said, "All right, we made a nation. Now let us make Italians, because Italy is a country of 20 different regions, and 20 different regions who have their own language, their own traditions, their own way of eating food, and everything. So let's make Italians. How do we do that? By actually trying to destroy the language, the regional languages that they speak, because Italian, the Italian spoken by most people in the 19th century was the language of the dialect in which they were born. If you're a Neapolitan, you speak Neapolitan. You don't speak Italian. If you're Roman, you speak Romanesque. If you're Venetian, you speak Venetian. Each region and each city, I would say, had its own language. But there was one language which was the literary language of Italy, which was the language that Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio used. It became the prestigious language of the literary world, but nobody spoke it. In 1861, maybe 5% of the whole population of Italy understood Tuscan, which was the language basically that became the literary language. Tuscan, Florentine, Dante, Petrarca, Boccaccio, these are people from Florence. Everybody else spoke a dialect. And they continued doing that they continued doing that until maybe 1960, 1970, when everybody through television, through radio and other things began to speak and understand Italian, which was the literary language that Dante used. In order to do that, you have to sort of destroy the language that people spoke at home. And so they created this kind of dual thing. Most Italians are bilingual. They speak their own dialect and they speak Italian. Nowadays, everybody speaks Italian. And Sicilian or Neapolitan is used only in the family context. But if you go to a bank, or if you talk to somebody that you don't know, Sicilians will not speak Sicilian. Well, they will speak Italian. But at home or with people they know very well, they will speak the Sicilian dialect. But again, because they don't teach it in school anymore, do not teach Sicilian in school, the young people are not learning it as much as they used to do it before. So Sicilian is under threat of extinction. Hopefully it will survive. And basically that's what Arba Sicula is doing. Arba Sicula is trying to make it possible for people to wipe away the stigma that is attached to speaking Sicilian. Because if most Italians learn Italian in school. So if you can only speak Sicilian, what does it mean? It means you never went to school. You're illiterate. You are an illiterate person, no education. So now things are different. I mean, I'm a university professor. I can certainly speak Italian, and I certainly speak Sicilian. But before, if I only spoke Sicilian to anybody, and there are people who actually only know that language. If you go into a small town in Sicily and you talk to an old person there, probably he will only speak to you in Sicilian. So the stigma, the indoctrination was done by the state, the Italian state. When Italy became one nation, they had to make it an Italian, which means that they had to speak Italian and not Sicilian and not Neapolitan. obviously, nowadays most people have a dual capacity, but Mussolini Mussolini forbade people from writing poems in Sicilian or language or Neapolitan, and that should not be published in newspapers. It was forbidden to do that. And if you went to school, and the teachers would punish you if you uttered a Sicilian word instead of an Italian word. For example, most teachers would say, "Oh, that's not." If you say racina, racina means grapes. If a teacher asked to say, "How do you say this?" Racina, they would say, "No, that's Sicilian. The right word is uva, uva." Now give me a break.
Mhm.
that, that is so asinine. That is basically the wrong thing, at least in our point of view, the wrong thing to do, because the more languages you know, the better off you are, the better connections in your brain. It has been proven clinically that knowing two or three or four languages improves the connections of the brain and retards the onset of Alzheimer. This is true. So,
Right.
this is what I could talk like this for another couple of hours. If I'm talking, I was talking about this book, Ignazio Butita. This 23 volumes like this. This is like the cover that we normally use for this. 23 books, most of them about ancient, let's say, Giovanni Meli, Antonio Veneziano, Nino Martoglio. These are all famous Sicilian poets. The most important one was the one I mentioned before. It's called Giovanni Meli. Giovanni Meli was the man to whom I have devoted many years of my life, translating into English. Uh, just to give you an idea, I translated the work of Don Quixote e Sancho Panza. Don Quixote e Sancho Panza, which somehow you can get that I'm talking about Don
Right.
Quixote and Sancho Panza, but it's not. It's not a translation of the Cervantian work. The Don Quixote and Sancho Panza is an epic, a comic epic of 12 chapters, each of which has about 100 octaves in it. So it's if I get up, I'll show it to you. But anyway, just think of it. It's like 12,000 lines of poetry. And it's not a novel. The Cervantes was a novel. This is a poetry work in 12 chapters plus one vision. And it's not the same as at all. It's not the same as Cervantes, because if I see the title is Don Quixote e Sancho Panza, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. The Cervantian novel talked only about Don Quixote, not Sancho. Sancho was a squire, was a lower, which means that basically Meli uh, brought the squire on the same level of Don Quixote. In fact, the hero of the whole thing is Sancho, not Don Quixote. And it took me 4 years. It took me 4 years to translate it into English. It took only 2 years for Meli to write the piece. A lot of work. So I've done on Meli. I've done the moral fables. I've done his odes. I also one of the books in this series is called "The Poetry of Giovanni Meli," and it's actually an anthology of all the works that I've done, which is like each text, the text on each page is on the same page. So you have the Sicilian on the left, and the second column, the translation. And the book is 335 pages, which means that if you publish it normally, where each page would have the Sicilian or the text separately, it would be 700 pages.
Hmm.
So it's a masterful. Uh, I just, now that I'm talking about, I'm reminded I just finished another thing recently. Bailey wrote 89 different fables about animals talking and expressing the wisdom of the people. And I translated all of them into English first many years ago, uh, using the same kind of meter and rhyme in the original. There was actually some of the fables were in terza rima. Terza rima, I don't know if you know what terza rima means. Third rhyme means that, like Dante's Divine Comedy is written in terza rima, which means that the first line of poetry rhymes with the third and the fifth, uh, and the second with the fourth, and I'm sorry, 1, 3, 5, and the other one will be 2, 4, 6. So the whole terza rima is a way of actually connecting the speech by using the rhymes, which is a very difficult thing to do in English. English does not have that many rhymes, but I did, my translation actually did the same thing.
Hmm.
I translated that. Now I was talking about that. I published it many years ago, but I wanted to do something different, and I actually did. Uh, I published it as an ebook, which has the Sicilian on the left and the English on the right, and on top of it there will be a little square with an arrow, which if you click on it, you hear the Sicilian.
Hmm.
So I not only translated it, but I translated the I also recited them, and it's available basically as an ebook from Kindle. If you go on Kindle and you see the Favoli Murali or Moral Fables of Giovanni Mele, you will find it, and you can actually. My original intention was actually to do recite the Sicilian, but also recite the English. I did actually record even the English, but it was going to be too cumbersome actually to put it together. Um, um, I decided to do only the in Sicilian original poem in the recitation. Maybe I'll do it some other time, but it's available now. So if you want to hear about the fables of Giovanni Mele, you can actually get it for $6.99, I think, from Kindle. It's called Moral Fables, and you can actually hear my voice reciting only the Sicilian for all the 89 fables. So it took me about 3 weeks to do
Hmm.
all the recording, because if you make a mistake, you have to go back, and then it was a cumbersome exploit. So I did that. That's the last thing.
So you're really adapting Arba Sicula to technology as new
Oh yes,
technologies come in.
yes, yes. Well, as I said, the first Arba Sicula was done on an IBM select IBM typewriter. No, we're using all of my book, not all of them, most of my books are in Kindle form as well, electronically. You can go there and you can buy them. But I prefer to actually do, these books. Um, I sell quite a few books every year, Not as many as I would like because my garage is completely. When I go inside, I have to send sideways to get inside.
No car, right? Just
No
books.
car, no car in the garage. No, only books. I must have like 25,000 books in there. You
More
know,
than a few.
more than a few, but we sell quite a few. We sell, but not quite as many. Um, Amazon buys my books every Monday. Every Monday, I get an order from them. Sometimes, sometimes for 30, sometimes for 10, sometimes for 15, but quite a substantial number of books. And my most successful books have been I don't know. I'll give you one. This one here is called "What Makes a Sicilian." You probably got this for free when you join the tour, because we give this to everybody who comes on the tour and who becomes a member of Arba Sicula. We sold 28,000 copies of this. 28,000 copies. And I have something similar to this called "What Italy Has Given to the World," which is kind of a serious and tongue-in-cheek type of book. And we've sold about 27,000 copies of that book. What Italy Has Given to the World. In fact, some organizations actually bought 1,000 copies just to give it to their members. NIAF, NIAF, if I recall, actually used my book as an incentive for people to become members of NIAF. You know, if
That's
you become a member of NIAF, we'll send you a copy of What Italy Has Given to the World. And they bought like 1,000 copies, maybe more than that. Maybe, I think they did it twice. Um
That's the National Association.
of Italian Americans
Okay.
in Washington. It's a big
Yeah.
organization. It's called NIAF. NIAF. Uh, Let me show you another book. This is, I told you before that I've done two grammar books, and you can see this is Sicilian, Learn Sicilian number 2. And it's basically, and you can see Mount Etna on the cover,
Mhm.
together with the Greek theater of Taormina. But this is the sequel to Learn Sicilian, Imparamolo Siciliano, which is the first, which has been a tremendous success. In fact, when I wrote the book, I never thought that actually I would be able to see anybody actually um, teaching using my book, but I have. My book is used as a textbook in several places. In New York, in Italian Charities, which is an organization in Queens Boulevard that teaches not only the first level of Sicilian, but also the second level. And they teach Sicilian. My textbook is also used in Buffalo, at the Italian Cultural Center of Buffalo. There's people who want to learn Sicilian. It
Hmm.
is being used. It was used at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Uh, but one thing is, when I wrote, I should preface it, when I did the book, um, I also wanted somehow, I heard from the president of Sicily that they wanted to actually uh, teach Sicilian in schools. And I said, "Oh, well, that's a good idea. That's what we've been trying to do for many years." And when they did, I said maybe they would actually do it, because sometimes Sicilian politicians say things, but they never go through with what goes on. So if Sicilian is being taught in school, there's no textbooks that can be used. When Sicilian, there's grammar books of Sicilian in Sicily, but they're not textbooks like we use in America. So my book is actually one that involves students so that they actually learn how to speak Sicilian, they learn how to write Sicilian, they learn how to listen and understand Sicilian. So we use the modern methods of teaching as textbooks. But in Sicily, they only have grammar books which describe these things. So one of my colleagues who teaches at the University of Tunis in Tunisia, his name is Alfonso Campisi. I asked him to actually, well, he asked himself, he asked me if he could do it. He asked me if he could do a translation of my book into Italian because there's a large population of Sicilians living in Tunisia. So at the University of Tunis, it's called La Manouba, the University of La Manouba in Tunis. They're teaching Sicilian using my textbook. The
Wow.
the Italian version of it. And this is the second version. I have, well, it looks the same. It looks about the same. You see, it's kind of a big book. This is 345 pages of text.
So Sicily never followed through on teaching Sicilian
Sicily
language?
never, let me tell you, I had printed 300 copies of that book, the Italian version in Palermo, thinking that perhaps it would be an adopted book for the schools. It never sold. It never sold for some reason, because people say, "Oh, what Sicilian is not one language; it's many different dialects within Sicily." It's not true. Basically, Sicilian has 10 different variations of Sicilian. If you go in Palermo, for example, they will say, well, they will pronounce one word in a certain way. If you go to Catania, they will pronounce that same word a little differently. So there are 10 different major variations of the language. So the question, which one are we going to teach in school? And they keep forgetting that basically the literary Sicilian is very homogeneous. In other words, I'll give you an example. You say the word for door. The word for door is porta, porta. If you go to Palermo, they will pronounce it poita. You hear it? Different? Poita.
Poita.
But if you go to Catania, they would say potta. Two T's. The RT, R followed by another consonant becomes double. So poita in Palermo, potta in Catania. If you say morti, la morte, death. In Palermo, they say moiti. In Catania, they say motti. You understand? So there are different variations. But I have never seen any written text of Sicilian written by a literary person or written as kind of a, by Meli, for example, or by anybody. They would never write it. They would never write moiti. They would never write motti. They will always write morti with an R in it. You understand? So the written language is pretty homogeneous throughout Sicily. But people tend to speak the language of their neighborhood, basically, sometimes, which is different from even a mile away from the same place. But the written language of Sicily is pretty homogeneous, which is what I try to do. So in this book, I wrote the whole book in Sicilian. The part addressed to the students is written in Sicilian. In the first one, it's in English. So we have sold, as I said, the Learn Sicilian and Parliamo Siciliano is already in its 5th reprint.
Wow.
reprint.
Yeah.
This one is already in the second because it's later.
Mhm.
So I can go on. I I can go on for long. I'll give you another book which I finished doing recently. This is called The Struggle for Sicilian Independence. And it's basically what actually happened when Sicily became part of Italy. You know, the story of Garibaldi, who came to invade Sicily in 1860 and conquered it uh, through all kinds of shenanigans, betrayals, treason, help from the British. So in school, everybody in Italy learns about the Garibaldi from from accepted hagiography books. In other words, if the people who write uh, those histories do not write it exactly as it happened.
Mhm.
But this one is called The Struggle for Sicilian Independence. It's written by Giuseppe Chanot, who was a man who told the story from the point of view of Sicilians. Point of view of Sicilians, I'll give you one example. Garibaldi came to Sicily with 1,000 volunteers who couldn't shoot, who didn't know, who had no army training, who had nothing. And Sicily was defended by 24,000 well trained and well armed uh, army. But with 1,000 men, Garibaldi conquered everything.
Hmm.
Now, does that sound like a reasonable thing that would happen?
Sounds a little sus, a little
Well,
suspicious.
they did that with the help of the British Navy. They did that with the help of volunteers paid by the British Secret Service. They did that by uh, having the man in charge of the Sicilian defense be a traitor. The general in charge uh, was basically brought to charge. They brought charges against him eventually, but they never were able to do anything. So all kinds of stuff. This is the real history of Sicily, as told by somebody who uh, has done research all the different things and examined each battle, examined everything, and it was basically the only way that Garibaldi was able to do it was with the help of the British service, the British Secret Service, the British Navy that had two um, two large ships in the bay of in the port of Palermo protecting Garibaldi. They It's a whole different story. In other words, this is a story that tells the history of Sicily from the point of view of Sicilians, which which ended up basically by uh, destroying the economy of Sicily when Sicily became part of Italy. The economy was destroyed. Um, People had no jobs. That's why they came to America. That's why within 30 years, one quarter of the Sicilian population had to leave Sicily. And where did they go? Many came to America. Others went to Northern Europe. Others went to Argentina or to Brazil or any other place. And later, some went to Australia. Why? Because there was no job, because they destroyed the they destroyed the whatever industry was were present in Sicily was destroyed. The economy was destroyed, and they invested all the. Let me give you one thing. The first thing that Garibaldi did when he got to Palermo was to go to the Bank of Sicily to take out the gold. He went there and took all the gold, and with that gold, he financed the rest of his campaign. Piedmont, which was basically the king of Piedmont, became the king of Italy, Victor Emmanuel. They had an economy based on paper, not backed by gold like the Sicilian region. So they took all the money and they financed the rest of the campaign, and then went north and destroyed the kingdom of the two Sicilies and gave it to King Victor Emmanuel, and that's how Italy was founded. In 1861, Sicily became part of Italy, and that was a disaster because it destroyed the whole fabric of the Sicilian economy. There also were some other problems with the grapes. For example, there was a disease that struck all the vineyards. Sulfur mines were shut because they discovered a different way of actually producing sulfur in Texas, and so the economy that was based on extracting sulfur from the ground was stopped, which is a good thing because that was a horrible fate for the poor people who were working in those mines. They used to hire little kids, from 7 to 10 years old, to work in the mines, and it was a horrible way of actually living. They stunted their height, all kinds of disease. So I'm glad that was over. But altogether, so that's I don't know how much more I can
Yeah.
continue, but if you can go on with this.
It's all fascinating stuff to me. I have a ton of questions. Um, I wanted to go back to just the Greeks for a moment because
Greece.
my father always said that he himself, his parents were from Marsala. Um, he used to say that Lentini, the town, was named. It was originally Leontini.
Leontine, yes.
He claimed it was named after King Leonidas of Sparta. Is that? Have you heard that?
Uh, I'm not sure. But it's possible because the Greeks who went to different places were from different parts of Greece. They were young men who were adventurous, and they went to Sicily to start a new world, to start a new colony in a sense. So they were from different parts of Greece. Um, so it's possible that it might have been uh, named after that. But Leontini is a bit done. Leontini.
Mm.
I'm not sure if it's. I can tell you. I can look it up for you eventually.
I'm sure naming a city after a king or a famous person was very common in those days.
Uh, well, yes, it's not unheard of, but I don't. I'm not sure about the.
Hmm.
I don't have the answer right now. But
Arba Sicula.
Arba Sicula means Sicilian dawn. The
Now,
word Arba,
if I'm not
is
if I'm
alba.
not Arba,
Arba means dawn
right?
in Sicilian, but it's a Sicilian word. The Italian word is alba.
Alba. That's what I was going to ask you. Alba. That's what I'm
Alba,
familiar with.
alba is Italian. Arba is Sicilian.
Okay.
It's Sicilian dawn. It's a renaissance of Sicily.
Right.
So that was the name the people who founded the organization gave it, because I was not the founder. I was involved with them maybe from the beginning, but not quite from the very start of the beginning. Maybe about a couple of years after they started, I became interested in what they were doing, and eventually contributed quite a bit to them until the organization was practically defunct, in debt. And I took over, basically. I took over the organization and relaunched it and gave it a different credentials, because I was a university professor. They were not literary people, but one was one was a professor of history. The other one was a man who was named Gaetano Cipolla, who was kind of a strange person. He used to call people in the middle of the night to promote Arba Sicula. He was a character. But when I took over in 1987, I was the editor of Arba Sicula. In 1988, I became the actual president. And from that point on, I've been doing everything for the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So if you have many members, if you have people there, we used to have actually a group of Arba Sicula in California, in Los Angeles. It was a branch of Arba Sicula, but they wanted to be on their own, so we let them be on their own. So there's lots of Sicilians in California.
Yeah, I lived in Los Angeles for many years. There was not an Italian neighborhood or enclave or.
No, you never had? You never heard of Arba Sicula?
Not in Los Angeles when I lived there.
Yeah, they were quite there. They were in Los Angeles,
Huh.
and they were. I even went there one time to actually give a lecture.
Hmm.
In fact, the first issue of this newsletter was actually produced by the people of the branch of Los Angeles.
Wow, I wish I knew that.
Well, now I don't think they're very active now. They're not active. I think most of them died, and they haven't continued. Although some people like Randazzo, for example, who was the guy who actually did the first issue of this, still a member. John Randazzo. He has a shop, a print shop, one of those places where you actually print books and booklets and things like that in California.
Hmm.
But they had quite a good following at that time. I'm talking about 1980s. So you weren't born.
Well, I wasn't in Los Angeles in the 80s, so.
No, in the 80s.
Yeah. I remember on the trip that I went on in 2003, one thing we did, which kind of blew my mind, was to watch a play in a Greek theater in Catania.
Oh, in Syracuse.
It was Syracuse?
Syracuse, yes, the Greek theater of Syracuse.
Okay.
We did that for many years, but I stopped. Actually, the last few we haven't gone, primarily because Americans, you ask them to sit there for 2 hours, 3 hours without understanding anything. It's tough. But they like the spectacle, the whole idea. They like the spectacle. I loved it. I would always buy the booklet of the plays, the Greek plays, the tragedies, and it was interesting for me. But I decided that maybe it would not be interesting for most of the people who came on the tour, because they were totally Americanized, and they wouldn't speak Italian or Sicilian.
Well, these days people would be looking at their phone the whole time.
Right. Yeah. So when we go to Palermo, when we go to Syracuse, we spend 2 nights in Syracuse, and we have some people actually come and entertain us at the hotel.
Hmm.
We have Salvo Bottaro, who's a showman who gets together maybe 6, 7 people to come and play for us, do a wonderful show, singing with. They bring their instruments, they sing, they sometimes recite poetry as well. But it's a wonderful thing,
Hmm.
and he's been doing it for many, many years.
Now, I read your article. You sent me an article on
Oh
the
yeah,
Sicilian School of Poets. And if I understand correctly, Sicilian as a language was formed before the language of Italian. Is that
oh
correct?
yeah. Well, basically, no, it's about the same time. About but the first school, the first language that actually became worthy enough to be used in poetry was Sicilian at the court of Emperor Frederick II, and it was called the Scuola Siciliana, the Sicilian school. Uh, and the most important poet of the time was Giacomo da Lentini, who also was the guy who invented the sonnet. He invented the sonnet. Um so Dante himself credits the Sicilian school for being the first, for being the first. And in fact, it was formed by people who worked at the court. There were courtiers, there were ambassadors, there were notaries, there were lawyers, there were whatever. They were all around the court, but they weren't all Sicilian. There were many Sicilians, but people also from the north, from Puglia, from Genova, and different places, and they all spoke the same language, which was Sicilian. So that Dante, in the Vulgari de Eloquentia, in his book De Vulgari Eloquentia, which is a book that actually evaluates all the different dialects that were being used at the time, uh, together with Sicilian. And he said that for the first 150 years of Italian poetry, everything written was written in Sicilian. First 150 years. So basically, what happened after that, when Frederick II died in 1250, his influence waned. And somehow, all the poetry that was written under the Sicilian school went lost. It was lost, and the only thing that remained was copies of the poems written by amanuenses, copied by amanuenses from different places, from Florence, from Pisa, from Venice, and other places. But it wasn't a copy exactly, it was actually a translation into their language. So that we don't know what Sicilian sounded like in 1220, 1225. We don't have no records. The only poem that was found to be an actual, authentic, genuine poem written in Sicilian was found in the 1700s. And it was a poem by Stefano Proto Notaro. Uh, and it's the only one that exists. It's the only poem written in a language that is what authentic Sicilian of the time. And he died in 1250, like that. So that's the only thing. And my attempt in the poems that I sent you was to try to re-give to the poems by Giacomo da Lentini uh, the tone, the words uh, of Sicilian by they changed everything. When the copier copied, they not only um, copied the words, but they actually changed everything, so that we have. Well, you read the article,
Mm.
did you? Right? I mean,
Yes.
you understood basically what the question was, because that they changed rhyme words. In fact, they invented a whole idea that there were such thing as Sicilian rhymes that were words that didn't rhyme correctly, and they call them Sicilian rhymes.
Mm.
How is that? For example, avere, to have. The word avere, to have, in Sicilian is avivi. They would claim they would rhyme avivi with something like avere, and claim that that's a Sicilian rhyme when it's not true, because what they did is they actually they changed the word avivi, which was the original, into avere,
Mm.
and then forgot to change, or forgot, or couldn't change the other one, so that we have these rhymes that don't rhyme,
Mm.
but they rhyme in the original Sicilian.
Right.
And this is what I did in the poem that I saw. I changed. Obviously, there's a lot of guessing going on, because we don't know what people said, how they wrote it in 1220. But it's most likely that they would write it the way I did. Most likely. There
Mm.
will be questions, but you can also get, for example, I don't know, for example, it's going to be little difficult to explain, not to explain, but I mean, if you read that article carefully, you will see exactly what happens, because when you Sicilian is a different language from Tuscan, from Florentine. There's all kinds of different things that one does with one language that can be done with another language. For example, when you take an infinitive word like mangiare, to eat, it's the Italian canon allows you to use the word mangiare by dropping off the end vowel. You say mangiar instead of mangiare, or fare, you say far instead of fare. Italian is fine. You can do that in Italian. You cannot do that in Sicilian. Sicilians will always use infinitives as written, as complete, without dropping vowels. And that, of course, changes the whole thing,
Mm.
changes the whole verse, because a verse is made of, vowels. Different, you have 5 beats, you have an endecasyllable has to end in a certain way on the 10th, on the 10th sound, the 10th syllable. So if you take off the E, the whole verse is no longer doesn't scan, is wrong.
Mm.
And if you have to have seven beats, seven vowels uh, for an oct, I use the decasyllable needs to have 10 syllables. No, it needs to have the beat on the 10th syllable. Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, it's Dante's first line. Nel mezzo, you see the word beats? Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita. Vita is the last word, and the accent is on V, not vita.
Mm.
The accent is on the 10th syllable. If you change one syllable before that, the whole thing falls apart. You get
Right. Right.
it? A little lesson in metric, the meters of poetry.
Right. So you are painstakingly looking at each word in the Tuscan and trying to figure out what Sicilian word did that come from, and what's going to
Right,
rhyme with those other words in that poem.
right.
That's
Not easy. Not
no.
easy because not easy because also Sicilians use words from Provençal as well. Because basically the Sicilian school inherited the Provençal, the people from Provence in French, and they use their words, and so sometimes it, the word that they may have used would be a Provençal word rather than a word from Tuscan or Florentine. It's not an easy thing. I mean, most of the scholars don't even attempt to do. Have never attempted to do that, except for one person, one linguist. His name is Sant'Angelo, and most critics have deemed his efforts as a failure.
Hmm.
So what I did, I'm sure people will probably say, "No, you did this wrong. You did that wrong." But to me, that poem by Giacomo da Lentini sounds so much better in my version than in the Tuscan version
Hmm.
because it talks to me. It's my language. I hear it. I hear people saying it. I don't. When I read this, the Tuscan version of all the poems of the Sicilian school, I have difficulty understanding what they're saying because first of all because they were very complex individuals, um, but mostly because those words are not were not, we would not use. There's a lot of things that I pointed out most of the things that were wrong uh, in actually doing the translation into Tuscan, because basically they changed everything. They changed everything. It doesn't. In fact, most people actually believe that Sicilian and Tuscan were the same language. There was a there was in the 15th century, 15 something, a scholar actually said there's no difference between Florentine and Sicilian. So the two languages are the same. But the two languages are the same. So what Petrarch wrote, this guy said, what Petrarch wrote is basically what Sicilians wrote, and because they didn't know the Sicilian of today obviously is very different from what you read the poems of the school. The Sicilian of today is Sicilian we spoke, but the language that the Sicilian school spoke or wrote is not Sicilian in that sense. Now some words are Sicilian, but look, I gave you in that article. Look at the translation. I included the Tuscan version,
Hmm.
the Sicilian, my Sicilian version, and the translation.
Right. I see
Uh,
that.
you see, you have it in front of you. You can see the differences. You can see how the words, especially the end words, are different.
So you have the very first line of Sonetto due, servire, and the Sicilian serviri.
Servire, yeah,
Serviri. Serviri.
servire, serviri.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Also, some verbs like that, you can actually you have two ways of pronouncing it. Like the word sentire, to hear, sentire. You can say sentiri or sentiri in Sicilian. There's actually ways of doing it. Sentiri or sentiri. It depends on where you put it, so that you shift the accent.
Mm.
But in English, but in Italian, it will always be sentire. It would not have that. But in Sicilian, you have actually different ways of doing it. Anyway, it's a very complex thing. But
Yeah.
if you look at those, I am very happy about that particular article. I'm very happy with the way the stuff came out, even though some people may think, "Oh well, we really don't know what Sicilian was like." Yeah, it's true, but those poems sound much better in my version than in the Tuscan version, at least to a Sicilian ear.
Mhm.
Uh,
Where are you from in Sicily?
Francavilla, province of Messina and Catania, right in the middle of, between Catania and Messina, on the river Alcantara, which defines the barrier, the Catania province on the left or south, and Messina province on the other side of the river. So Francavilla is on the right side of this. If you look at a map, it would be on the right, on the northern side of Sicily. But basically, Sicilian, Messina and Catania. But I also lived in Catania for 4 years when I went to school. So, and all the poetry that I've been translating from different parts of Italy has given me a command of let's say the whole global Sicilian language.
Mhm.
So I know. In fact, this book gives the first rules of the variations that you can see in Sicily. The variations between the language of from Ragusa to Catania, Palermo, Agrigento. I have 10 different things in here where uh, you actually see the difference. I give the rules why, what happens when you're in Catania. What happens to the language of Catania? How does it change? How is it different from Messina? How is it different from Palermo? There's I and this is the first book actually that does this.
Mhm.
Um, because my point is that this is only referring to the spoken language. The spoken language, you see all the different variations. The written language does not show that. The written language is more homogeneous, more the same. Uh, Nobody would ever write. Well, I mean, some people might write it, but the literary canon doesn't allow that to be the case. You will write in a koine. The word koine, you understand, means koine is a, a language that where everybody uses the same terms. So a koine is a homogeneous language. In Sicily, the written part does follow the koine, but the spoken language is very different. Most people will have difficulty understanding a Palermitan speaking very fast. But if you see it writing, you don't. You have less problems.
Well, my hopes are for two things. One, that in schools in Sicily, they will reinstitute the teaching of the Sicilian language. And two, hoping that one day some more of those poems will be found in a library or a museum or
Well, they have been found. Oh, they have been found.
they have been found.
They have been found. They have been, but not many. Not many. Not many have been found. But they've been found in places that you never thought would actually be there. In Milano, for example. In Milano or in the north. Uh, which gives the lie that Sicilian school was only local. It's not true. Sicilian school was known all over the place. What I told you about Dante is that whatever whatever poetry was written in say the first 150 years of Italian literature was written in Sicilian, whether they were Sicilian writers or not. You have people from Puglia, for example, Apulia, and people from Genoa, from Bologna, and some of these poems have actually been found uh, have been found in deeds, legal deeds, because people in the old times, the notaries in the old times, would not, if they had to write the deed of a house or something like that, they would fill the whole page with text
Mm.
so that nobody else could write more. You
Mm.
understand? So they would fill it with poems.
Oh, wow.
They would fill it with poems.
Yeah.
And so some of these deeds have been unearthed, and some of these deeds contain Sicilian poetry in Sicilian. So we can't be 100% sure of what Sicilian was like in the 12th century, 13th century, but we have an idea of what it would be like.
Mhm.
And my idea is that it would sound more like Sicilian, the Sicilian that I know and that we know, uh, in part, not altogether.
I,
Anyway,
I have to tell you, I've been reading this book about the Sicilian
okay, I have.
Vespers.
I know. What do you think?
I like it so far.
I liked it, but it's much too cinematic if for my own. If
Well, I'm a movie guy, so.
your movie, yeah, yeah, it's very cinematic. It's very cinematic. I was sent. They sent me that book to review it, and I don't like to review books where I may have to say something not negative because the book is well written. And very involved, well written, except that he takes leaps of the imagination that can only work in a fantasy movie where people can fly like today. You know, you get people flying up the building. They're over here, all of a sudden they go up there. But that's only in the movies, in fantasy. So I would have liked to have seen a more down to earth type of treatment. But anyway,
He uses some Sicilian phrases in there.
some most pretty correct. Most of the time when I see something like that, I couldn't. There were many books that people send me. I do not review because of that,
Mm.
because they don't know Sicilian and they pretend that they know Sicilian, and they write wrong things, completely wrong. So in this case, I don't think I found many. So I found some things are questionable, but not many because it's not many. I'll have to look it over.
Mm.
You, but read it. Finish reading it.
Well, it gets me excited about learning about that situation and that history. Because I've heard about it, but I never really dived into it and learned the
Well, there's
details.
a lot of imagination in that. Um, but you have
But
to make up your mind.
now, the town called Carlentini,
Carlentini, yeah.
that
It's,
the CAR part was named after King Charles. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You can look up things like that. Would probably every town has a website that they do.
Mm.
Sometimes if you look them up, it might say something. Or go to Wikipedia. Maybe you'll find something.
Mhm. Okay. Well, Professor, I could talk to you for a long time.
And you can see that I can talk for a long time.
Yes, yes.
But well, it was nice talking to you, and you should become a member of Arba Sicula. I told you it's the best bar in town.
I will do that. I was at one time, and I will do that again, definitely. And if you do another trip next year, I may seriously consider that.
Next year, I doubt it, but this year, we're having trouble actually finding a room in hotels in Palermo because all the hotels are full, and we have an option for a wonderful hotel, but Palermo has become a place where people they ban the cars from the center of the town, so it's mostly you have to walk. So the hotel where we have the option for a room is in a place near the cathedral, which is close to traffic. So we would have to stop maybe about 300 yards away and then we have to walk to the hotel. And some of the people are old, and I didn't want to. I hope I don't have to do that.
So it's become a lot more popular over the
Very
years.
popular. Last year we had trouble too, finding rooms in the hotel, but finally we did, and I'm sure we'll find something this year as well.
I have a friend, for years we've been talking about, hey, let's go to Italy. And so finally we said September 26th, we're going. So we've bought our tickets, but we do want to visit Sicily, probably the eastern side of Sicily.
Right, Lentini. You have to go to Lentini.
I have to. My town.
Go to Catania, Lentini.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friend has never been to Italy at all, so it'll be a real treat for him.
You already have the tickets for that?
We bought the airline tickets. We haven't booked. Now, what you're saying about hotels, we should book the hotels now.
No, probably one or two people, no problem. When you have 40,
oh, yeah,
it's different.
Yeah.
I'm sure you won't have any problem. And besides, you don't have to go to a 4-star hotel. You can go to a 3-star.
Right.
Save money, right?
That's true. That's true.
But, well, good. Nice talking to you. Become a member, and I will send you the new publications. All you know where it's Arba Sicula. All you have is Arba Sicula. It's Post Office Box 149, Minneola, New York.
Okay.
Post Office Box 149, Minneola, New York, and zip is 11501.
11501. I was born in East Meadow.
Yeah, well, so you know the area. You know.
Sort of.
Right.
Yeah, well,
it only costs $30, but you're young. Maybe for you it'll be 35. 30 is for seniors.
Maybe I look younger than I am. Just saying.
You're not a senior.
No, not yet. Not yet. So.
All right. I'm sorry to hear about Antina. I liked her.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, she actually wrote a book, and at that time she was because she was a horticulturist,
right,
planting and gardening, and she compiled a book of Sicilian plants,
right,
and had pictures of them and a description and the history of what they were called and so on.
Wow.
So I suppose I should get that published someday.
It wasn't published.
No. I don't know if she ever really finished it, quote unquote.
Well, I remember one time she actually stayed in Francavilla. She stayed on her own in Francavilla, in my hometown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, nice talking to you.
All right, stay on for a second. All right, thank you everybody for watching.